was wondering about, you say something about contentment with basic requisites. Because something that most people would like to have, if they thought about it, to be satisfied with that which is available, readily available to you, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You know, good enough food, good enough clothing, good enough shelter, and enough medicine. But that's, even though we have those things available,
People want more.
There's no contentment generally.
Right. There's no contentment because there is no because people are careless in regard to their desires. Contentment requires maintenance. It requires you to foresee things before they arise, to foresee a possibility for proliferation before it arises. So it's just obviously, as everything else that if somebody's just starting, it's going to be unpleasant because of the discomfort, and it's going to require some doing and learning. But once a person develops that habit, then they don't need to be constantly obsessing over simplicity and keeping things simple and requisites, because that will become the way they prefer to live. But until they reach that point, you do need to keep yourself in check. That's pretty much it. To just ask yourself, well, hold on, do I need this much, or do I need this many? So is this sufficient? And most often the answer is yes, absolutely. And the reason why people always go for more is because of the unquestioned attitude towards avoiding discomfort. People don't want discomfort. It's like, do I need a mattress of that thickness? Well, no, really. But if I don't have it sufficiently comfortable, I won't sleep at night. Well, you might not sleep first night or second night, but third night you'll be so tired you'll sleep on a concrete block. So you train yourself in that regard. Obviously you don't have to do it sort of without a purpose, as in just try to renounce everything and not eat and sleep on a stone. I mean, if that brings the unwholesome states to decrease and wholesome states to increase, by all means. But doing it in itself, because sometimes people can get intoxicated with that sort of Dhamma determination, which is misguided. Like you're just doing it out of some sort of matter, thing to prove. Like, I don't lay down when I sleep and so on. Why? What's the relationship between that and unwholesome states decreasing and wholesome states increasing? Usually ends up increasing the conceit and so on. So you always want to keep it practical. That's how you won't be able to kind of veer off too far into conceited determination of I'm the best, I'm the toughest. Keep it practical, like things that are genuinely practical, things that are not necessary, that can then support your practice towards wakefulness and towards diminishing of the unwholesome states. So the little things. You don't have to throw everything away, but ask yourself, is my mattress too soft? Could I sleep on a harder surface? What would the result be? Well, it would be less sleep, because you wouldn't be able to overly enjoy it, because it's not too comfortable, which means, okay, so that could bring the unwholesome states to decrease and wholesome states to increase. Means I won't be indulging in the sleep. So you remove your mattress and sleep on a wooden board. But if you're doing it out of some sort of self-advertisement, well, I mean, it can still arise, it can still be made wholesome. So in a way, it's still okay. But it's important to distinguish the two. Whether it's done out of just some sort of inspirational determination, or if it's done for the purpose of practically supporting your practice.
Becoming stronger, being able to...
tougher. You can take more then.
Handle
means
things.
You'll be bothered less, because you can take more.
Mm-hmm.
You can take physical pain.
You take more by taking less.
Exactly. But if your body is dependent on a certain amount of comfort, well, you would struggle if you were to leave the softness of your home, your environment, your bedroom, you would struggle. So ask yourself, like, is my current situation really making me tougher and able to endure the elements, as the Buddha said that you should, because some of the taints have to be abandoned by enduring. So, like, you can ask yourself honestly then, well, would I be abandoning any of those taints if I can't even give up my 5-inch mattress? Yet you're supposed to be enduring cold and heat and mosquitoes and insects, discomfort.
Or just an evening meal, eating less,
Sure.
so to speak. Or
Sure, eating less,
eating
exactly. Yeah. Is it necessary? Will I die if I don't eat until tomorrow? Will this hunger kill me? Am I genuinely like fainting and I don't know, losing my senses? No, no. So it's just a bit of discomfort.
There's also in terms of shelter, trying to get your surroundings, in terms of your shelter, perfectly spiritual in a way, so that you can practice correctly, so that you can become a stronger person.
Sure. Well, no, that's all rooted in that, as I said, that misguided inspiration and determination. It's more on a level of people's identity and what they do and what they're practicing. It's not really rooted properly on the level of actually trying to uproot the identity, belongings, appropriation, sense of self, life, and existence. People have a little shrine and they have a little setup. I mean, again, we have to differentiate. Are we talking about a casual a lay person who is practicing, or you're talking about somebody who's really sort of going for it, committing to it full on? If you're just doing it part-time, then it's fine. These little reminders can be helpful because, well, you're not giving up the life. But if you're actually a monk or something like that, then it's not really. I mean, a monk who's practicing towards arahantship or towards understanding the Dhamma at least.
Because shrines can be focuses of your intentions to practice.
Well, not really. I mean, again, as I said, if you live a busy lay life and you have no intention of leaving it, then a little shrine can remind you of certain values. In the same sense, the Buddha said, if you're not doing anything else, go and visit the place where the Tathagata was born and so on, because it will make you think about him, as in think about the values of enlightenment. But having shrine and worshipping shrine for the sake of your practice, well, that's just completely redundant. It makes no difference, literally. It's neither contributing. Well, it could be taking away if you think that's what practice is. But I think most people don't think that. They might do it out of a habit or some sort of like pleasing identity. My shrine, my Ajahn, my this, my that. Which is fine. But if you want to arrive at any relevant distinction, that needs to be overcome.
In terms of the benefits of community life for a monk, as opposed to living alone, do you think it's good for a monk to start off in a community, or just go straight into seclusion, take on the suttas, read the suttas, practice?
Well, it depends on the community, and also depends on the monk. As in how much self-transparency has that person developed beforehand. Then they might be able to make it.
Because there's this Dhammapada verse says, number 61, if in your course you don't meet your equal, your better, then continue your course firmly alone. There's no fellowship with fools.
Well, I think that refers to somebody who's not short in Sotapanna, because he already knows what equal to Sotapanna is, as in another person with the right view. Okay, then you will be living harmoniously. Otherwise, you're just pairing yourself with fools, unless they're there to learn from you, which is a different type of relationship. The person who is starting cannot apply that verse because they don't really know. what the criteria is for the right view and for the equal or better. But that's what I mean. If they're self-transparent, as in they're really looking internally towards things that one should be looking at, then theoretically, yeah, they could probably go straight in a more secluded environment, but highly unlikely today, because there are other things that you can learn, necessary things, the rules and interaction, because today Buddhism is pretty much inseparable from its respective tradition. Yeah, ideally, Buddhism is not a tradition, and it didn't used to be, but you can't expect today to be just some pure setup. It's always going to have some traditional influence, which means you always need to know, at least to a degree, how to relate to it, as in learn, basically. But that brings to the next point of, well, it depends on the community, because some community might be a bit too obsessed about a random tradition that has nothing to do with the practice of Dhamma, and it's all about that. Or it's all about full-on control, telling people what to do, and so, which you don't necessarily sign up for. But I think there are, if a person is clear with internally by themselves what they want, and then take it a step back, as in don't overact out of that inspiration, and I'm sure a person can find a suitable enough place where you could strike the balance between, well, learning certain, ultimately unnecessary things, but practically necessary things, and having time to practice with yourself correctly, with the suttas and everything else.
There's another verse, sutta I'll read out, Anguttara 8 verse 30. It says, the Dhamma is for one who is reclusive, not for one who is entangled. And thus was it said, with reference to what was it said. There is a case where a monk, when living in seclusion, is visited by monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen, and with his mind bent on seclusion, tending towards seclusion, inclined towards seclusion, aiming at seclusion, enjoying renunciation, he converses with them only as much as is necessary for them to take their leave.
Yeah.
This Dhamma is one for one who is reclusive, not for one in entanglement.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. You have to, as I said, you have to find that balance, or find a place that has a balance. Like there are monasteries in Thailand, for example, where you'd meet in the morning for pindapat and chores, and the rest of the day you're on your own in your kuti. So you're practicing seclusion, but within the community. So if something comes up, occasionally they would be, getting together to study, like junior monks, whatever, Vinaya, so on, and that's all fine. But then on the other hand, you have those monasteries who are sort of have all these kutis, but then you constantly have to be mingling with each other. So despite having the potential for that kind of reclusive life, and minimum of coming together and socializing, you end up spending most of your days socializing. Oh, at 5 o'clock we have puja, at 6 o'clock we have pindapat, at 8 o'clock we have chores, at 10 o'clock we have meal, at 1 o'clock we have cleanup after the meal, at 3 o'clock we have, dyeing robe session, at 5 o'clock we have tea, at 6 o'clock we have puja, at 9 o'clock you go to your kuti alone. Well, that's not bent on seclusion, it's just constantly living with a group. And there is a genuine factor of being physically secluded. Like, in comparison to a busy lay life, sure, a group of people in the monastery are quieter and more secluded, but fundamentally, from the point of view of practicing the Dhamma correctly, physical seclusion is necessary. Even if you're not talking to each other, just sitting next to each other throughout the day, meditating together, well, you're still not physically secluded. And to that extent, you're at loss. So that's what I mean, to find that balance whereby there will be some interaction, certainly for the first few Nisaya years, but then that doesn't mean like you subscribe to 80% of your day interaction. That quickly gets out of hand, pretty much. Because ultimately you're training to be able to live entirely alone. But the only way to train that is to start being alone, bit by bit by bit. But if you spend your time just constantly being with others, well, you're certainly not training in solitude. And that's why many people from the busy communities would be quite, well, they wouldn't be at ease if they were just dropped in a random forest kuti on their own. It would take time to get used to it, if they get used to it. And I saw that in Thailand as well. Some people were genuinely scared with the idea. Or even going into the environment that nobody can speak English, for example. It was just like... But yeah, you can't expect to be able to do that overnight. But unless you're trying, you're certainly not going to do it over hundreds of nights. You just won't. It won't happen overnight. Nor magically by itself. So that needs to be your goal. So if you recognize that weakness in yourself, that you're afraid to be alone, or you might not be able to handle it, you have to start training and exposing yourself to it bit by bit by bit, which means that the monastery you're in has to at least support it, has to at least allow possibility for it.
So then what is the benefit other than learning the rules?
Well, the benefit could also be that the gradual exposure to solitude, but your aim is solitude from the start. And then gradually exposing yourself so that when you reach a point where, yeah, you can live alone now.
What if your aim is to be more conducive to others? That you can go in the world, wherever you go, wherever there's a human being, you can be conducive.
Okay, yeah, so you should be aiming
and
for
happy.
solitude, because solitude is necessary for arahantship, and that's the ultimate conduciveness for others. Freedom from greed, aversion, delusion.
Because community life can challenge you with, with other people.
Yeah, lay life can challenge you.
There's another sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 21, verse 10. And there's this an elder monk who lives alone. And the Blessed One says to him, "Is it true, elder, that you live alone and extol the virtues of living alone?" He says, "Yes, Lord. But how do you live alone and extol the virtues of living alone?" "Lord, alone I enter the village for alms, alone I return, alone I sit withdrawn in meditation, alone I do walking meditation. That is how I live alone and extol the virtues of living alone." So the Buddha says, there is that way of living alone. I don't say that there isn't. Still, listen well to how your living alone is perfected in its details, and pay close attention, I will speak. So the Blessed One said, and how is living alone perfected in its details? There is the case where whatever is past is abandoned, whatever is future is relinquished, and any passion and desire with regard to states of being attained in the present is well subdued. That is how living alone is perfected in its details. All-conquering, all-knowing, intelligent with regard to all things, unadhering, all abandoning, released in the ending of craving, him I call a man who lives alone.
By the way, what's the battery like? Is it filming? How many minutes?
90.
Huh?
Well,
Cool.
10.
Sorry?
10 minutes.
Okay, so...
So you're saying that's how you truly live alone, is to abandon craving.
Yeah. Well,
basically.
that brings me to the other point that I should have mentioned before, is that sometimes monks can use solitude as a form of avoiding things. As in, you run to a kuti, you lock yourself in, and then just because you don't want to deal with anything. But that includes, you don't want to deal with hardship, discomfort. So that's also done for wrong reasons. Which means you need to be making sure that your motivation towards solitude is rooted towards practice, not towards avoiding, not towards just not being hassled by unpleasant things. So you just lock your door and you don't leave at all. And you can easily see whether it's rooted in that. Just sometimes somebody will come to your kuti and see if you're upset. Are you upset that somebody is disturbing your solitude? If you are, means you're holding on to it wrongly. Or if you're overly joyed that somebody came to your kuti, equally means, okay, so you're struggling with solitude, so you're just looking for distraction. But either of those things, or rather both of those things, can be overcome on the basis of solitude, not on the basis of socializing. That's like that other sutta, I don't know which one, but I remember reading it, where the Buddha said, even if a monk goes and lives in the forest, and he just spends his time sleeping and being sluggish and not practicing, well, eventually his mind will sort of calm down and get established upon that conclusion, and then the wholesome states will increase. On the other hand, you have a monk who lives near the village, and although he's not sluggish and unmindful, because he lives near a village where there are people frequenting and coming, he will decline there. He won't increase. So that's what I mean. The solitude needs to be that basis, but obviously it's not a goal in itself. And that's what the Buddha points out in this sutta. It's good that you're alone, yeah, that's a form of solitude, but now you want to take that solitude to the point of understanding and freeing yourself from greed, aversion, delusion, from desire, which is how you're truly alone.
Because, as you said, abandoning the past.
Yeah, exactly. Abandoning the past, abandoning the emotional connection with your past. When people, that's why people are afraid to be alone, because the mind starts thinking about things that were done in the past, could have been done, or shouldn't have been done, and all that. It just becomes a serious issue, or ends up thinking what I'm going to do tomorrow, or can't wait for tomorrow when I'm going to meet people and then do this and then do that, or hoping for things tomorrow to come up to be done so I won't be in solitude because I find it too hard. So yeah, he abandons that, and then he fully discerns what's presently there, and that's how he's truly alone.
So how to not procrastinate?
Sorry?
Procrastinate. Put things off. Like I said, one sutta says, I have to go on a long journey tomorrow. I better rest now. And so I don't have time to practice. I've got things to do tomorrow.
Oh, right.
I just recovered from an illness.
Sure.
I've got to take it easy. I can't practice. Or I am ill.
I better not.
And then it's the opposite of I am ill. I might not have time to practice.
So I better practice.
So I better practice now.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly how to not procrastinate.
To have just that attitude.
Well, to think of the alternative as well. Well, wait a minute. What's more important? To rest and go on a trip tomorrow? That might be unavoidable, but that's not the question. The question is, which is more important? The random trip that happened to be unavoidable due to circumstances, or your practice of Dhamma? So you know the answer. Mm-hmm. It's far more important to practice Dhamma, so then you make sure that whenever you can practice, you practice it. And you don't use other things that are not equally important as an excuse to not make the effort towards the Dhamma.
There again, it simplifies your life by having a clear goal.
It does, yeah, exactly.
Practice,
yeah,
nothing else.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what it contributes to.
It's not about robes. It's not about food. It's not about shelter. It's not about praise.
Yeah. So why did I become a monk?
But yet.
And then make sure you relate to that answer. Why did I become a monk? To practice Dhamma. Oh, so is there a connection with that practice of Dhamma? As in, am I practicing the Dhamma? Or has it just been sort of pushed in some sort of abstract background? Whereby, yes, of course, I'm here to practice Dhamma, but really, practically, your choices and things you do have nothing to do with practicing the Dhamma. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you don't go and don't do anything around. Things don't necessarily need to be a distraction. But you don't want to be doing anything on account of doing the Dhamma practice. So if you can do other things within that practice of Dhamma, that's fine. But that's the criteria. That's the criteria you use to judge the other types of activity. And it does, again, comes down to what we spoke before, being practical. as in doing things that have practical purpose.
I guess sometimes it's just lazy. You might have those reasons, but I suppose
Well, yeah, laziness is a factor.
just lazy.
Yeah, lack of energy, laziness, sloth and torpor. But that's one of the hindrances that needs to be overcome. Because you're practicing the Dhamma correctly, as in not tolerating the unwholesome states in your mind, making effort to not engage with them, and making effort for the wholesome states, for mindfulness to be established and so on. It's diligence. It's a proper diligence. It's like doing the work when work is necessary. Imagine a chore just presents itself, and you just have to go and do it. You can't postpone it. Like living like here, when it starts to rain, for example, and your roof just suddenly new like leak that wasn't there before. You have to go and fix it, despite the discomfort of heavy wind and rain. You end up hanging off the roof, but you have to go and fix it, because otherwise, what, you're going to wait until tomorrow, but it might not stop the rain, and then what, you'll be flooded inside. So imagine how much more important then is to have that kind of attitude towards the unwholesome states, to abandon them, and towards wholesome states, to cultivate them. So that's why it's diligence. It's not diligence because you walk like a slow motion robot to observe every moment that passes you, committed to the point of neurosis. No, it's diligence because you recognize the work and you always do it. You don't procrastinate. There is the unwholesome. That's that sutta where the Buddha was the fear and dread. He said, if I would be walking and then some fear or unwholesome states arose, I wouldn't change the posture until I dispel it first. That was done firstly because if he were to act out of it, if he were to change his posture on account of that fear or unwholesome states, his action would have been rooted in that unwholesome state. So he wanted to prevent that, and also he wanted to prevent postponing of dealing with whatever has arisen. No, I'll move after I finish this. It has arisen, that's the work for you. Yeah, you didn't ask for it. Doesn't mean you're not responsible. Because that's all it takes with unwholesome states, to ignore them. And then you'll be acting out of them, which then brings more unwholesome states, which then you can only, that's why it's so easy to be ignorant, to give in to lust and aversion. That's why it's natural with the grain. So that's where the diligence of practice is. Discerning that, not tolerating, not welcoming, not denying it either. It has arisen, that's fine, but being able to withstand it, being able to allow it to persist while it's changing, while it's becoming different yet still the same. Being able to endure it, basically, that's what I'm saying. Without acting out of it, without ignoring it, without trying to distract yourself from it. And that requires work, nothing else.
What about, like, you have a fear arise, but then you think, it's because of my past actions.
Yeah.
Why?
So you're avoiding the responsibility. Even if it is because of your past actions. It doesn't matter how the fear arose or why. What matters is that what you're doing now in regard to it. Are you acting out of it? Are you running away from it? Or trying to get rid of it? If yes, that's your responsibility. Doesn't matter. Even if it did arise because of your past actions, makes no difference.
You said this was abandoning the past.
Yeah, that's how you abandon the past, in that present.
There are unwholesome states and you deal with it.
Exactly.
Yep.
You don't distract yourself from it. If it's unwholesome in terms of sensuality, well, you don't indulge it, you don't welcome it, you don't entertain it. You don't let it linger, as in with like a allowing attitude.
And that's also the cultivating of wholesome.
Automatically, sure. Exactly, yeah. It's not like, okay, now I've dispelled the unwholesome, let me find the wholesome to do. No, dispelling unwholesome, it's what wholesome is. Hence, automatically, if you're reducing unwholesome, you're automatically increasing the wholesome. If you're decreasing wholesome, you're increasing unwholesome. To the same extent. They cannot coexist. which means you need to have solitude to be able to have clarity of your thoughts. Because if you're constantly distracted with communication with others, sounds of others, you won't develop that same level of discernment. So if you do live in solitude, but then don't just do some sort of things to distract you from yourself. And often people end up doing meditation for that purpose. Well, I'll sit and meditate, because if they just sit and do nothing, it becomes a bit too much. That's the whole point. That's what you're training against. You want to be able to think properly without being overwhelmed by that fear or boredom or anxiety in that solitude. Because how can you discern presently arisen unwholesome thought or wholesome thought if you're refusing to think? If you're just trying to shut the thinking out?
How can you do the work?
Exactly.
Knowledge.
Yeah.
What's it fun?
So you need to start thinking and allowing those thoughts to arise, and then learning how not to act out of them, then learning how to remove the attitude of welcoming the sensual thoughts, remove the attitude of trying to get rid of the unpleasant thoughts, because the thoughts are not the problem. It's that attitude based on how you feel in regard to them. That's the problem. But if you're ignoring them, trying to stop thinking or whatever else, how can you see the problem? And if you don't see the problem, how can you solve the problem?
Also, even if you're not successful to a degree, at least you're doing that work.
Well, exactly. Yeah, the success can come out of the right type of work.
There's a persistence.
Yeah. Trial and error.
That's the right type of work in a way.
Yeah.
Just trying.
Yeah.
Even though,
Well, that's why you don't get more specific instruction in the suttas. He's diligent. He arises energy. He doesn't tolerate unwholesome. He cultivates wholesome. Yeah, that is the closest you can get in terms of instructing somebody. Yeah, persistence. Have I attained that which hasn't been attained? No. No excuse then for lacking energy.
he doesn't use alms food for the wrong reason. He doesn't use his robe for the wrong reason.
Everything then becomes aimed for that right purpose. And if you pair that with how we started this whole discussion, having a degree of discomfort in your life, that will keep you it will keep you mindful of that basis. Because you might think, oh no, I'm striving properly, I'm cultivating, while your whole life revolves around comfort. Access to medicines and robes and cushy bedrooms and so on. So you ask yourself, well, actually, is there a likelihood of this being an impediment? And more often than not, the answer is yes. But if you have a degree of discomfort, you can't get too complacent. So then even on the days when you really don't have much energy, well, you won't be too complacent, as in you won't be too lazy, because you can't. Because you can't sleep too much on a hard wooden plank. It's too cold to just sort of, sit and do nothing or read some poetry or whatever else. You can't. So it just keeps your mind sharp. That's why usually solitude and a degree of discomfort, very obviously for different people varies, would be bringing the unwholesome states to decrease and wholesome states to increase. Yeah, toughen you up, basically.
Do what's important.
Yeah.
Do what's necessary.
What's necessary, exactly. Yeah. Because you just can't afford.
Sensuality.
Yeah. Yeah.